My name is Sarah Danziger. I'm Education Program Manager here at CPW. You're here for our weekly Meet the Artist night, where we learn about work from the artists themselves. Really excited to be joined tonight by 5 photographers featured in an article in the Times-Union article by Matt Moment, so also Hudson Valley based. A couple announcements before I get started. Nicole, maybe let's put the AC on. It's already starting to get hot in here. As soon as that door closes. Workshops are live, summer workshops. So if that's something you're interested in, learning straight from the artists themselves and getting out there, we've got a lot of really, All right, we've got Raymond Meeks will be here, Dylan Housethor, we have Baldwin Lee, maybe you all have heard of him, Jim Lafferty, we have Naima Green, we have Andrew Moore, our very own local Andrew Moore, and Justine Curlin will be back. Judith German-Hines, who's in the house. I can't find her face right now. She'll be in here teaching wet plate, and we'll be back at this very beautiful property doing that. So if you're interested in learning wet plate, have a chat with Judith. She's really fun. We always have a good time. Am I forgetting? Oh, and Alice Brzezinski. Well, so it'll be great. We'll have a really fun summer. We're going to have a book fair. We're going to have a festival. Portfolio reviews, please just follow the Instagram. We also have an opening next Saturday. This is your last chance to check out Adriana Alt, who's also from the other side of the river. Many of you probably are hailing from there. This is the last few days to see her work, so please have a look if you haven't already. And then next week we'll be opening Counter Histories. So that work, I wish I had the names offhand, but we'll on our website. It'll be a great partnership with Magnum Foundation, coinciding with the launch of the Counter Histories Aperture issue. So that will be fun. We'll be partying afterwards, so come by if you want. All right, tonight. Oh, and our gala. There's a party. It's over at 25 Diederich Street. We can all go, but let us know so we have enough beer and food. Yes, I'm being serious. Says the one throwing the party herself. Can you tell the plant? And another thing is our gala, which is a Vision Awards gala. We'll be honoring some really, really phenomenal artists that you may have heard of. One Lifetime Achievement Award is Nan Golden, maybe you've heard of her. Anne Lee, Photographer of the Year. We have Keisha Scarville as our Saltzman Prize winner. Fantastic, really excited about that. And then we will be honoring Collaborations book. So please, that will be fun. And tickets just went on sale. So if you've got some extra dough, come and party with us on April 20th. All right, tonight we welcome 5 local photographers who are included in, like I said, Times-Union 30 Hudson Valley Artists Under 30 article written by Matt Moment. The artists Jessica Chappe, Alice Fall, Alanna Floreck, Eliza McKenna, and Isaac Jeffries. Unfortunately, Roger could not make it tonight, but check out his work. He's amazing. His book is amazing. We love him. First, we'll be joined by Jessica Chappe, who's a mixed media storyteller who focuses on how people find belonging through community, place, and self. Her work is a social practice, conducting oral histories, using photography, videography, archives, and journalism to help expand our understanding of humanity and what keeps us connected. Then we'll be joined by Eliza McKenna, whose work focuses on grief and loss and a personal experience with losing her father at a young age. Through intentional conversations with subjects about death, grief, and loss, Eliza continues to create photographs that express a curiosity for life and living. Then we will be joined by Alanna Floreck, whose narratives are psycho-spiritual clues towards self-evolution, rarely ever revealing too much information until after perfect deliberation. She pairs her whimsical images with tidbits about her latest life lesson. Then Isaac Foss Jeffries, who works with a variety of mediums within film, ranging from medium to large format photography. Isaac's work is keen on location, sentimentality, glamour, and nostalgia, and draws inspiration from reimagining mid-century American resort culture. Very cool. And then finally, we'll be joined by Alice Fall, whose images that inhabit a world that is alive, obfuscating. You make me say that word publicly, Alice. Obfuscating the binary of stillness and movement, the accepted and the rejected, the delicate and the grotesque, and opening up spaces of unreality through an exploration of play, intimacy, guilt, deception, and vulnerability. Before I welcome Jessica up, I'm going to say that we're going to go through all of their presentations, then we'll take a brief moment to get coffee and shake our legs out, and then we'll do a Q&A. And that's it. Thank you all. Jessica.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the great introduction. My name is Jessica Chappe, and I'd like to share 3 projects with you guys. A lot of my inspiration comes from my roots. My parents were part of a writers group that met in 1988 in Los Angeles. The group became very close, and from a place of mutual interest and support spawned what is now known as the First Sunday Group, which meets every first Sunday of the month and shares a big meal and spends time together. I was raised in this group, and still to this day, the group goes up north to Marin County every summer, about an hour outside of San Francisco, and plans a themed day of festivities. I took this photograph a few years ago on the same spiral stoop. This year, the theme was magic. This was my first real understanding of community, which in lots of ways is why I'm fascinated by how people form community and create a sense of belonging. The first project I'd like to share is Personal Utopias. I studied photography at Bard College, and for my senior thesis in 2016, I wanted to do a project on the water supply system. Though that project wasn't going anywhere, it was incredibly unfocused, and my advisor at the time was like, "This is shit. What else are you taking photos of?" I showed him this photo of a girl that I was babysitting for, and it was her 6-year-old birthday party. And then I showed him this photo of an event called Bike Kill, run by the Black Label Bike Club. They put on this event annually in the city. And he said, "There's something here." So I started researching. This is the Watershed Center in Millerton, New York. I studied, sorry. I started researching and documenting more group-oriented spaces. I was looking at spaces large, like Arcosanti in Arizona, and small, like the Kingston Model Train Club, place-specific and more family-focused, usually around a mutual interest. This is Bee Home, which is in Catskill, New York. But what began to hold the work together was the unique visions that pushed against the normal cookie-cutter life instead of focusing on the individual normal job trajectory and a family unit. I wanted to highlight collectives and the people who created space for imagination to flourish. This is a photo of Pauline Oliveros, who founded Deep Listening, and I photographed her 4 months before she passed. I also, in a lot of ways, wanted more examples of community out of college. I spent a few hours to a few days documenting each space and selected one photo to represent each place. This is a photo of the 12 tribes that's up in the Catskills. I was also equally as interested in the stories as taking the photos, so I conducted interviews with one person per place, which I included in a booklet and a sound piece. This is the East Kingdom, and they are part of the Society for Creative Anachronism, and they meet in the basement of a church in Kingston. This is a photo of Bob Carr. He created a crystal cave in Yucca Valley. He also passed away a few years ago. in the middle of a swap meet. He's a philosopher, and a lot of people would go and meet with him. My website also includes information about each place, so I recommend visiting. For now, though, I would like to share one story with you guys. This is a photo of the oral history of female drummers, and it's at the Brooklyn Museum. This performance was produced by Tom Tom Magazine, founded by Mindy Abovitz in 2009. As the first and only magazine focused on women drummers, Tom Tom has created a global network of women who play the drums. The performance is structured so that the drummers are placed all over the museum as individuals to represent feeling like they're the only person within their community that plays drums, female drummer, and then they all come together at the end to represent that they're in community. Kiran Gandhi, who is one of the members of the group, said, "There is community, there is support, we are here for you, we see you." And so this is really, for me anyway, the significance of the oral history of female drummers, that we can see each other, we can celebrate each other. Personal Utopias became more of a life project and has grown in many ways, many different ways. The next project I want to share is Beloved Community. In 2020, as we can all remember, we were in lockdown and then George Floyd was murdered. I was living in West Hollywood at the time. I went to protest day one with a camera in hand. After being stuck inside and isolated, it felt like a jolt to the system. The streets were alive with grief, rebellion, joy, anger, and love. I spent 3 months documenting and going out 3 days a week. There was a march on Juneteenth, and I met Persephone Rosanansi, who is one of the leaders of the march. I was blown away by how their conviction and passion, and learned afterwards that Persephone was a poet and asked if they would write poetry for to accompany the work. So we put together a print sale fundraiser, and we included Persephone's book called Your Son is Dead, which is a poetry book about their gender transition. We extended the concept of beloved community described by Martin Luther King Jr. as a society that embraces all and discriminates against none, to define the project, because this is what we're all still fighting for and what was very felt in the streets in solidarity. For the next project, I'd like to share Suminskiansky. I moved back to the Hudson Valley in November 2020 to work for a photographer with the hope to do a project on the Suminskiansky. It was a place that I used to spend a fair amount of time when I was at Bard. And after leaving, recognized that it was incredibly unique. The short story goes, Tim Bull, the innkeeper, back in 2003 was the local bartender in Tivoli. He was told of this house that at the time was broken down. And he went and looked at it and was blown away. And he wanted to fix it up. And so he found the woman's tax records and typed on a typewriter, typed a written letter to this woman, Josephine Denegris, who at the time was 93. And she got the typewritten letter, called him and was like, "I've never received a message on a typewriter before. I want to meet you." And so basically took him in. He fixed up the house over the course of 3 years, and to pass on the house, they got married.
People can come through the middle. Standing back here.
Okay, and then, hello everyone. Good to see your faces. Okay, and so Josephine passed away at 99.9, as Tim likes to say. And this is Tim, the innkeeper. And he turned the inn into half a B&B and half a boarding house. During lockdown, though, as Tim puts it, it became a life raft, and 22 people over the course of lockdown lived together. The story of the pandemic was mostly of isolation and loneliness, though this was the story of community and what a building like this can give to a group of people. This is a photo of a boy named Yarosh that at the time he only spoke Russian and learned English fluently living here. This is Doug, a writer. He's been living in the house probably now for like 12, 13 years. This is Jim. He created a podcast in this room, and there's Momo would bark a lot. Like, there's one, he mentioned that Momo was snoring on one of the recordings and had to re-record. This is David. He's an alchemist. This is Luca and Jacob, Bard students. Caroline and Hattie. Tallulah, she moved from Colorado. And this is Reese and Tilly. This is Ryan, who is Tim's nephew and who really helps run the inn. And this is Rue. And I found it really interesting how the house transitioned over time. Like, this is the same room. This was her bedroom, their bedroom. And then it was a parlor room converted into a bedroom and then converted back into a parlor room. But Tim liked to take naps in it. This is Coco. And Flynn and Riley on the left, and then their friend on the right. And they lived with their guinea pigs in the house. And this is Emma. And there's, in the article, there's quotes from each of them. And then that just shows, I spent 6 months documenting. And the story ended up in Curbed in New York Mag. My highest hope for my work is to inspire people and show examples of what belonging can look like in many forms outside of what we're taught and make it feel more tangible. If you're interested in my work, you can look up my website, jessicachappe.com. Oops.
Okay. Hold on. Get situated here. Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. A lot of people here. My name is Eliza McKenna. I was born in Rhinebeck, and I grew up in Woodstock. And I have a pretty strong attachment to the Hudson Valley. I went away to do my undergraduate studies at Wesleyan and my MFA at Pratt, and I kind of always knew I would end up back here. Grief and loss has been a constant presence in my life. I lost my half-brother to a heroin overdose when I was 11 years old. And that was a time when, like, my brain was literally forming, so it became a thing I constantly thought about. And photography became a very meaningful way for me to express my feelings in a productive way. So starting very early in photography, I've focused on grief and loss, and I primarily blend documentary and fiction in order to allow for nuance and some very real feelings and emotions that I have and questions that remain. So the first project that I want to share is a project called Please Have This Room Made Up. I did this in my time at Wesleyan when I studied under Sasha Rudensky, and I credit her, like, to this day. She lives rent-free in my head. She completely formed the way that I think about photography, so I like to credit her. But basically, I went around to hotel and motel rooms in the area to recreate or reimagine my memories of my brother's death. And at the time of his death, I was told that he died alone in a hotel room on the bathroom floor, but I later learned that it wasn't a hotel at all. It was a rented home. But I'm thankful that I learned this information after I made this project, because it allowed me to express like the fictitious narrative that little Eliza made at the time to cope with very real feelings. So that was very cathartic. So yeah, what I wanted to communicate with these is kind of the feelings of waiting in limbo for like the imminent disaster that, you know, was to come. So that led me to my next project, which was called Mea Culpa. So after learning the reality of his death, and when I read the actual death report, I really struggled with feeling kind of stupid about making a story up in my head. And it led me to completely abstract and intellectualize my, you know, relationship with it all, and especially with my father. So my dad's health was also deteriorating at this point in time, and I think I knew that I didn't have a lot of time to answer some questions I had surrounding the event of my brother's passing. And I had a lot of anger and immense pressure from my dad to be perfect because of the path that my brother went down. So I once asked my dad before he died, "Am I your redemption child?" And he literally said, "Yes, you are." So you can imagine the pressure that puts on, you know, you know, someone coming of age at that time. So it was at this point when I started reading a little bit about, you know, trying to figure out what the fuck I was doing with photography. So this quote like struck me like a lightning bolt. I'll just read it. "The cult of remembrance of loved ones absent or dead offers a last refuge for the cult value of the picture. For the last time, the aura emanates from the early photographs in the fleeting expression of the human face. This is what constitutes their melancholy, incomparable beauty." So photography wasn't about taking pictures anymore. It was about using the pictures and their personal aura to meditate on my experiences with loss, and in almost like a religious way. So I felt like I was connecting almost to like an energy, God, if you will, whatever, that allowed my consciousness to completely run free. So that was the final picture from that series. And then my dad's health got very, you know, very bad. And then COVID hit, and we all know what that was like. And he ended up contracting COVID, and that's what took him out. So if you experienced grief, you know that you're kind of left in limbo, like a lack of resolution to unanswered questions, which led me to Larry and I. So this is a working title. In my mind, this work is not resolved, and I have plans, so just you wait. So I met Larry on the internet, and he revealed to me that he also lost a son to a heroin overdose, and there were countless similarities between him and my father. It was uncanny. It was wild in terms of background, spiritual beliefs, and just lived experience. So Larry and I began to make pictures in each other's homes. And we were having intentional conversations about losing, a son. And he gave me answers that I never really got from my father. He was very articulate. He was very expressive. And the domestic environment kind of emphasized, it was so charged with like memory and energy. So some people have said that I was playing dress up with a grown man. But in my mind, it really goes beyond this because of the intense personal relationship that we developed at the time. So that's Larry. And this was the final picture we took together. So this is early 2023. And I lost Larry as a subject. We had differing expectations for each other. And this sent me into like an extreme depression and creative block. I honestly probably should have been hospitalized if we're being honest. But I've since come out of that depression, which is the good news. And I had a mystical experience, if you will, where I felt my father's presence, and it revealed to me that I'm not going to find my father in another human being because he's here. He's all around us. He's here right now. And I know he's here. I can access him at any point. And after experiencing this, which was just wild, all I wanted to do was connect with others who have experienced, something similar. So that led me to this project, which is untitled, and at the risk of sharing work too early, whatever, we're here. So I have been meeting with people who have experienced grief and loss and making pictures out of what they share with me. And it's very cathartic to connect with other people, especially after COVID. Like it's so meaningful to me. This is Harmony. Harmony lost her mother, father, brother, and her boyfriend, all to overdose or ODs. And we photographed at her childhood home, which is completely collapsed in on, again, a very charged environment with memory. And she's the picture of resilience. She's an amazing person. Like, I don't know how she came out of that, but she is an amazing person, the sweetest person you'll ever meet. And I'm still trying to figure out the best way to communicate these narratives. So it's very much a work in progress. And then this is a picture I took of a woman and her son who got a tattoo for her late father. And she put his ashes in the ink for the tattoo. So it's very much, a meditation on relics and generations and just the whole cycle of birth and death. And yeah, I'm really excited about what's to come, but thanks.
Alanna.
Oh.
Okay, perfect. Hi, thank you so much, CPW, Matt, Nicole, for having me to do my first ever artist talk. My name is Alanna Floreck, and I have been practicing photography for about 12 years, starting with an early iPhone and a toy point and shoot with a Tumblr influence, quickly on to a DSLR that has lasted me until now, an independent mentorship throughout high school, various digital and film classes sprinkled throughout, and confidence that I can owe to existing in the Hudson Valley. That is, growing up in Warwick and then going to college at New Paltz. I've become more grateful to have come from this background of receiving local, personal support now that I'm living in Brooklyn. Today, as a way to both introduce and sort of sum up the entirety of my practice, I would like to analyze why the essence of my images has actually remained unconsciously consistent. I will be sharing what I could dig up that exhibits this phenomenon most accurately. My photographs alone come across, I think, as a worshiping of the creatures and elements that are presented. I'm a spiritual person in the sense that I'm comfortable and honestly obsessed with paying attention to intuition, dreams, symbols, and cycles. And so I'm often photographing essence, strictly and purely snapping photos within a second or two of that tingling sensation of urgency and exuberance. Here's the most thorough example of what I mean. Within 10 years, I've changed drastically multiple times over in terms of temperament, social circles, living location, travel experience, art consumed, steadfast opinions held, education received, and curiosities answered. But apparently, regardless of this, I'll always point my camera at a tiny fish and love the result. The same can't be said about a lot of other creatures. They would not fit into my established world. My shooting practice has always been very on my own adventures. I'm sure I'll find something. And it turns out I came back with a lot of the same things time and again, usually without remembering that I had taken them before, which I think proves the unconscious aspect even more and has left me curious about the psychology and ineffability of art style. My thesis at the moment is that art is proof of our most unchangeable substance, of the tastes we were born with and bound to, tendencies to alchemize our experience similarly over and over again. Not about capability, but about habit. Not a new concept, but now my own collection can contribute positively to the data. Stereotypical and especially digital photography gets closest to this mystery, I think, because it requires the least premeditation and intervention if you so choose. There's never a blank page or a room of idle musical instruments to begin with. There's only something with which you have to collect representations of what's around you. It can even be seen when we work in or consume different mediums. There are colors, shapes, and plots that we will always resonate with. I collect music that sounds like my color palette and watch movies from the same universe. I've experienced this in writing as well. Coming to my first big conclusions through writing a few years ago, I find myself unenthused by what I've tried to write more recently because they have been similar or identical narratives. I'm learning the same things again. This has been a common topic among artists, to say that making it cannot entirely be learned because after learning technical skills comes the impulse and energy to keep it up. I wonder where art style comes from, and I don't think it can be entirely answered because after just a few whys, why? You, or at least I, will come up with nothing. I like rainbows, I like bugs, I like water, I like proof of spirit wrapped in twinkly packages, and I like when people are near these things contributing to them also. These make me feel comfortable and excited. I think they're pretty, and I have positive associations with them. But most of these symbols are not objects that I own that could have tangible, personal sentimentality. They're usually not faces either, but are things that exist without having anything to do with me, that I for some reason feel most sentimental about before they become a memory. Not human biology, nor familial genes, or my first ever memories can get entirely to the root of it. They have become some recognizable trademarks of my work. It is such a high honor that friends will send me images of rainbow refractions or wishing seeds, acknowledging my appreciation of them. But what does it mean to have trademarked these sites? I couldn't actually tell you why. I'm honestly not sure where I will go from here. being so conscious of my patterns, but I'm sure I'll continue to accidentally repeat myself and prove that I haven't changed. If anyone has any thoughts, theories, literature, or disputes that contribute to my first time circling these hypotheses, please feel free to share them with me. Thank you.
My husband is my photos. So. I always say that I date my camera, so you know it is what it is. Hello, how are you all? Good? Cramped? Hanging out? Okay, vibes. And I just do this to go right and left. All right. Oh, I just gave away 2 slides. Here we go. Okay, my name is Isaac Jeffries. I grew up in Rhinebeck. I am kind of native to the Hudson Valley, but I always say that I'm like everywhere at once, anywhere within like a 200-mile radius of the Hudson Valley, Catskills, anything like that, upstate New York. And I went to Parsons for photography, and throughout that entire experience was taking photos of hotels in the Borscht Belt or the Catskills. And every time that I do talks about this, I always have to do like a little history moment because the history of this absolutely fascinates me, and it's what motivates all of my work. So for those of you who don't know, and many of you may not, which is good because I normally talk to audiences that are older and know, about an hour away from where we are right now was considered the top vacation destination in the country. And sometimes they said the world, but that's not necessarily true. They just advertised it that way. And Sullivan and Ulster County became home to 538 hotels and over 50,000 individual bungalows. And it was a world of excitement and beyond. And they became like these ginormous resorts, literally from these tiny, like very, very small boarding houses. Originally, Jewish farmers would come up from the city looking for land that was fertile and would do something more than die and make everything die. And that's what ended up happening. So they would take these boarding houses, have people come up and stay for like 3 weeks, because in like the tenement era, obviously it was like 150 degrees in the summer and you wanted to get anywhere that wasn't that. So these rooms would be rented out, and they would also have these things called cook-alanes, which is Yiddish for cook alone. And it's so the idea is like you're in a bungalow colony and you have this central portion. It's like a casino type thing where you have entertainment and shared meals and everything. So the foundation of this experience was a really cultural moment. And as time continued, I actually have a little thing here. Like most of the United States, Sullivan and Ulster County caught railroad fever. Once a desolate industrial region, the Catskills had become a tourist destination, offering its visitors fresh air, clean water, local produce, and entertainment. And then once Route 17 was built, I don't know if anybody's been on Route 17, but it's a highway for the ages. They called it the most beautiful highway in the world. I beg to differ, but it created a boom in the sort of American tourism moment. And then you could also get up to the Catskills on the short line buses. So it was a whole experience. And by the 1930s, a lot of these hotels would start to grow. The buildings that were the boarding houses would end up getting these like stucco like exteriors. So they would have these Spanish style ones in the 1930s. They called it Sullivan County Mission. And I guess this was to like reflect that sort of Miami moment that was going on, because a lot of these hotels were born out of like prejudice, multiple groups that were seen as the other, not just like Jews, basically every group that you could ever think of that wasn't white. Would come up to the Catskills and attempt to enjoy life and create their own sort of paradise. So I always say in the 1950s, even though people say like that era was not an area you'd want to live in, this area was the one area where you could really truly be yourself. In almost any way, not every sort of way. But on the right here, there are these other buildings called Sullivan County Tudor, and these were supposed to evoke like a country British sort of feeling. And I also have to, of course, include a photo of the bungalow colony experience in the Catskills, because this to me is the picture of the idealized and maybe fictitious, because we never lived it, but 1950s, 60s American vacation. You have frolicking, happiness, everything in between. I always say, I don't know if that's a dog or a turkey on the left side right there, but I love it either way. And I just need you guys to picture, like, pretend it's 1950 something and you're going on Route 17 and you see this, but like every exit, there's like multiple versions of this. This to me is like a great sort of visualization of the Catskills. You have this sort of almost like a platter of different hotels that you can choose from with these lovely names: the Nemerson, the Flamingo, the Majestic, Gilbert's, the Aladdin. Some of them would have last names of the hotel owners, and others would just be named to like attract you, like the Avon Lodge. It's probably not associated with the Avon makeup company, but very 50s and very exciting. And as time continued, these hotels would grow to have basically every amenity possible. A dining room, because the eating part of these hotels was a big thing. You'd get like 4 meals a day and only have to pay a certain rate for them. An outdoor pool, an indoor pool. The Catskills probably like by capita of like resort regions in the world probably have the most indoor pools. Like I don't think any other place has as many indoor pools as the Catskills. There's at least like 150 of them. And they're a lost art, by the way, the art of the indoor pool. We'll talk about that in a second though. Luxurious lobbies, as they would always promote. And then a theater, obviously, theaters, nightclubs, beyond. And whatever, I don't know, what is this? Ice skating? They would have ice skating or tennis or you name it, they would have it. And they would have it so that even if people asked and they weren't going to use it, they could still say that they did have it. And then, of course, in the 1960s, this is a great way to like represent exactly how big this era got. The hotel owners were celebrities to the celebrities of the time, and the celebrities that would go and perform there would also go to stay there. So just to list a few people off of this lovely image, obviously we see the Judy Garland ad at the Concord right there, but that's Lucille Ball smoking at Grossinger's. She didn't even perform there. She just stayed there. Toady Fields, Elizabeth Taylor during one of her many weddings, and she also got married, I think, the same year, like, or the same at the same place the year after that. Eleanor Roosevelt, Mamie Eisenhower, Stephen Eady, Sammy Davis Jr., Paul Newman, the Shirelles, if anybody knows who that is, and then the Berry sisters, which were these really, really amazing like Yiddish jazz singers that began in the Catskills in the 20s and became their own celebrities within that circuit. And then once I wish I could show more photos, by the way, of like the heyday, but we have to get to my work. So unfortunately, in like 1965-ish, the hotels and that sort of idea of a place with 3 ballrooms and nightly dancing and all of this other stuff that was very, very normal in the 50s started to wane. Also, the Anti-Discrimination Act was, I think, enacted in like 1964. This was during like the civil rights movement. Beyond this, I mean, money, financially, these people were trying to compete with each other to build the better indoor pool and would take out like $5 million loans and then realize, oh, there's like only 50 people coming to our hotel now. So these resorts would start to close. They'd either be abandoned or turned into camps or rehab centers or anything that the county could find to kind of like fill this void of 500 resorts darting the entire thing. And this entire county also, I don't know if you've been to Sullivan County before, but you probably can see kind of what has happened since then. The entire county relied on the resorts. So when that left, the entire county kind of faded away. And that vision started to fade away. So John Margulies, this amazing roadside Americana photographer, went in the 1970s to Sullivan County to photograph what was left of these hotels. And I always say that like this would be a lovely era to be in because these look like not your average, forlorn abandoned buildings with graffiti. These look like you're walking into something that has just either stopped in time or something that seems kind of out of a dream, like that building that says Polonia on it. We were just looking at the postcard of it before. And it's just like the idea of it being overgrown with trees and all this other stuff in this era, I've always thought is really spectacular and different. So on the left side here, this is an advertisement for a yeshiva that opened in the former Laurel Park Hotel in South Fallsburg. So like I said, a lot of these places, if they weren't abandoned, were sold to either local like Orthodox or Hasidic groups from the city and become yeshivas or summer camps. And they would just tend to keep the buildings the way that they are. And to this day, the buildings are exactly the way that they are in the 1960s, just used for different purposes. And then on the right here in the Catskills, you would start to see a lot of Yiddish signage along with English signage. So a lot of things have changed since then. But okay, where I didn't realize I was going to transition that quickly to my work, but now I have to like go into that mode. So I went into these resorts a lot in the like, or I'd say late 2010s. I was going to say early 1950s, but I wasn't alive then. So, but I wish in my mind, this is how you know I'm crazy. But basically I would go back to these places like every day, especially during COVID, and COVID was not a fun time for anybody, but I was going to like school online there. That's why Parsons, I probably went to like 10% of my classes, but I still got through it. So that's good. But throughout that experience, I was always motivated to just make work about the Catskills and was always searching for something that would bring me back to the postcards that I was looking at, because I was wondering why, for some reason, all these buildings that were beautiful in the 50s and 60s, you would just see natural light pouring into them. And the idea of that sort of glow, and the idea that the rooms were literally made to kind of come alive with the way that lights were dangling from here, or, you know, put up here, whatever. It really changed the way that I saw these places. And so I just decided to put these 3 little lights in this building at the Homowack Lodge. And that is how you know these places are dated, because no hotel called the Homowack would unironically be able to make it through to the 2020s. But this was the Homowack Lodge, and this was a guest wing there. And when I put these lights in, I just felt like I was going back to 1960 something for a brief second. It was a weird illusion to see. And I know this hasn't, you know, it's probably been done before. Somebody has definitely put lights up in abandoned buildings, but I wanted to, at least for myself, change that sort of narrative of just continuously seeing abandonment over and over and over again. So basically what I do at this point is I have like a reference image, not all the time, but if I can have a reference image that I pull. I don't try to recreate the exact photo, but I do try to pull a lot of inspiration from like what I can bring out from the 50s that are left over. So this was the Stevensville Hotel in Swan Lake, New York, which is now, I believe, a summer camp. It's an Orthodox summer camp, yes. And as you can see, this room is just kind of used as the way that it was left, probably in the late 70s when they last renovated it. But that ceiling, that beautiful Miami Morris Lapidus looking ceiling, is left over. And I just tried to kind of evoke that sort of moment of not really like a last hurrah, but I want to give it just something. I want to give it something. The room has nothing when you just photograph it with a, you know, blaring light going on it. And it depresses me. So I don't want to get depressed looking at my own work and looking at these places. This, I guess you could say, is a little creepy, but maybe not. This is the Nevele Hotel in Ellenville, New York. You may have gone past it at some point before. It's that gigantic circular high-rise that exists out there. With this photo, again, it was just kind of the intention of bringing this building, which has been through it. In 2020, it looks like a bomb went off in there, but basically everybody used this place as their like COVID, like, let's have fun, let's like break things, whatever. And I wanted to, before it gets any worse, you know, any worsely messed up, I wanted to just give it that sort of moment of a golden glow and give it that like 50s feeling that still exists, but you just have to look at it a different way. This is the indoor pool and the indoor pool wing at Klein's Hillside Hotel in Parksville, New York. This pool was built in 1965, and it was supposed to be like the most in pool of the time. We don't really have checkerboard ceilings left over, but it is what it is. And basically when they built this, they realized a month after that they could not keep up with the building that they built, so they sold it to a camp that is there now to this day. So they got a free 1965 brand new hotel, and it's been that way since then. This is a bas-relief / mural staircase at the Nevele in Ellenville. In 2002, this thing used to be beautifully painted, and then I always say they like Windows XP'd the entire property. They made it very like early 2000s, boring green patterns, gray, whatever color this is, like a beige. And this thing had been, you know, painted over 1.5 million times, but I really couldn't bear to take a photo of this and have like graffiti over it when it's already telling its own story within the sort of scene that we're seeing. So I probably shouldn't have done this because I would have fallen or whatever, but I painted that middle row of people right there and then painted all of the rest to kind of look the way that it did before doing this photo. And for the way that the room looks, I'm very happy with the way that the picture turned out. Then this one, I think this was the poster for today, so thank you to whoever chose that. But this is the Jerry Lewis Theater at Charles and Lillian Brown's Hotel in Loch Sheldrake, New York. And it is exactly what you think it is. It's a theater sitting in the middle of the woods, stuck in probably 1978 is when they last did a show here. Anybody who is anybody played this place. It was named after Jerry Lewis, the famous telethon / comedian of his time. And doing this photo, I remember finding those bandstands, the one that say B, it's for Browns. I found those bandstands in like the attic area, and those were like kind of the piece de resistance with the image that I was trying to create, because as much as I would love to bring in 250 people to recreate the postcards and do that whole moment, it's a liability, and I don't have the money to pay for any of that besides the creation of this image. So we did this, and the light is kind of in place of where people would be. Same sort of thing with this one. This is the Stardust Room at the Nevele Hotel. Again, like this one I always say was kind of the easiest theater image that I've done, just because at this point I kind of got the sort of shapes and stuff down. But I really, again, wanted to give this room the respect that it deserves, because clearly, as you can see from the broken glass aside that came from the ceiling behind you, because it had a very like Mad Men looking bar thing that overlooked the theater, I wanted to give this room one more moment of peace and stability and celebrate the art and the architecture and the creativity that went into designing a place like this, because these were designed by people with great architecturally, like just amazing people. I like lose words every time that I talk about it, because I feel like my work in a way is a response to all of the art that is thrown at me when I walk into these places, like that amazing light fixture in the Starlight Room at the Stevensville Hotel. This room actually had power, surprisingly. So normally these places don't have power, and I set the lights up. I set up a few lights down there and stuff, but this was just kind of me finicking with this very, very old breaker system from the 1950s that would like make noises when you would touch it and stuff like that. But because the lights worked, I think this is such a rarity to walk into something that hasn't been used in 30 or 40 years, and you just feel it. You feel like this, for me, was kind of like completing that sort of journey of trying to find and try to understand really how this happened, how people left, and how to bring that, essence of the past back. And then, thank you. I feel like I should have said a little bit more, but I feel like I've gone over my time, so there's much to say. Anyways, appreciate it. Thank you. But yes, much more to say, but I'll say it at a different time. So, thank you.
Okay, there. Sorry about that. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for everyone for sharing your work, and thank you to CPW for having all of us, and thank you to Matt for your beautiful writing and organizing tonight. It feels like an honor to be here, and I have a lot of feelings and nerves about it, but in the end, I think it's worth standing up here a bit uncomfortable for a while in order to be in community with you guys and have these conversations. So thank you. Okay. And just ignore the bar at the top. Maybe just like hold your finger, block your sight line. I'm going to start by going back as far as I can to tell you who I am and where I'm from and things like that. And then I'll move into the work. I'm from Oklahoma City, and these are images I made in 2004 when I was 4 years old. They're really exciting to me because they feel really full of life in a way that I've been missing in my own work recently. And they're a necessary reminder that I've always been interested in image making and what it means to make an image or look at an image. They make me think a lot about the person I was then and the person I am now and all of the ways I was in between those points. It's funny to consider my perspective as a kid in a small body with a camera going around observing the world and making these small notations. I love the one in the top left corner, especially this moment of impact between the hand and the board. I doubt I was thinking so much about it then, but now it makes me think about when expectations misalign with results, how the board didn't crack, but the hand did. Seeing those photos has been a reminder to keep making even without a defined project. One way that I'm able to do that is making in response to someone else, which brings me to a few images from my photo conversation with my friend Rainer Turum on A New Nothing. It's been helpful for me to situate myself in spaces where I'm working collaboratively, to have these sounding boards and people who can reflect and translate my ideas back to me in ways that push me forward. Here are some artists that I've been looking at forever, and artists who made me start taking photography seriously when I got to Bard in 2018. So from the top left is Nan Golden, Francesca Woodman, Moira Davey, Peter Hujar, El Perez, and Genesis Baez, who are all in their own ways bringing me back to this idea of transformation, of images that are able to suspend the viewer in a space of vulnerability and narrative unpredictability. Okay, I'm going to start with a project I did in 2022 during my last year at Bard. I titled it, I Went Back to Sit in the Sun, which is a line from a short story I wrote about two sisters and the tensions and family dynamics that are at play within and between them. And if at any point you want me to slow down or circle back to any images, just shout it out. So I've spent the last few weeks and months getting ready for this, making these lists about everything I've ever made work about, like theme lists. And now I have this pile of categories and subcategories and bubble charts, and I wanted to distill it into something cohesive that I could share with you. So here is a bit of that. I lay my cards on the table in an attempt at vulnerability, in my craving for something real, some kind of coherency and order and certainty. But my effort is pathetic and the world tugs back, a game of shadow tag, a deceptive trick, and a quick distraction. But within it all is a kind of order, something so comforting in the inescapability of being held, contained, resisted, exhausted, and shed all at once. Photography helps me translate the world into something that makes sense to me, something I can really sink my teeth into. It's the most articulate way for me to draw parallels, speak to interconnectedness and the ways we exist together and relate to each other through the complications and contradictions that exist in every relationship. The way I've been writing and thinking about these images recently is through questions. Sometimes the pictures function as answers or arrows pointing towards answers. Oftentimes they don't, but I keep asking. When body meets body, where hand grazes the ground, where shoulders touch and eyes cross paths, what emerges for just a moment? Can it embody both sameness and difference? Can multiple iterations of something grow from the same foundation? And what are the ways we try or don't try to be like something else? In a conversation I had with my friend Rainer that was published last year, I talked about the experience of being home in Oklahoma, which sort of encapsulates a lot of themes from this project. I said, this place is completely at odds with that of the community I was a part of at school. There are so many rules, both explicit and implied, and I feel myself bending to follow them. I'm talking about being myself fully, feeling safe and comfortable with queerness, figuring out how to navigate a sense of self that is filtered by the space I'm in. I hate how performative it feels a lot of the time. So many people here lead with fear and hatred and would do anything to avoid vulnerability, to avoid facing oneself. I feel it. I think everyone feels it, no matter who you are. It's hard to be here, but this is home. I spent most of my life here and my family is still here, so it's a complicated relationship. And the more time I spend here, the more conflicted I feel. So this brings up my attempt to juxtapose fragility with emotional heaviness and the precarity and the weight I'm trying to give to a photograph. While I was making this work, I was thinking a lot about the tensions that exist between two spaces, two objects, or two people. And so I feel this theme surfacing again and again of two figures that overlap with a commonality, but also exist as separate entities. And how that related to living in a way that walked the line between acceptance and non-acceptance. Here I'm thinking about bending to fit into spaces and responding to boundaries. For me, this picture encapsulates the dynamic between my mom and my sister and I through an image of them that reflects all three of us back through the lens. We're all so different, but somehow we've all still grown from the same point. Often I catch myself trying to look around through their perspectives and I picture them doing the same thing. Here I'm thinking about hiding oneself and how images can function as stand-ins and how an image of overlap and entwinement can represent a duality between growth and collapse, exhaustion and replenishment. I'm going to move out of this project and into newer pictures from this past year. I've started thinking about how the work I just showed can function as a catalyst for new work, how it can be redefined. And something I've been having trouble with is feeling overly tied to it, like it's a bit inescapable. And I don't have any answers to that, but it's something that's been stopping me in my tracks recently. I put a lot of pressure on myself to know what the thing is that I'm trying to say in very definitive terms. But I think it's important to talk about this idea of not knowing, the messiness of ambiguity, and allowing myself to dig at something that hasn't revealed itself and may never. I think research and moments of clarity and understanding deserve attention, but I'm also wondering how to be submissive to the reality that I'll never understand completely. I'm thinking of all of it as sort of an excavation where each picture reveals part of the whole, and I'm far from knowing what the whole is. Here I'm considering beauty that clashes and becomes unsettling or uncanny. And again, a moment of weightless suspension, thinking about the fragility and precarity which simultaneously is pulling down towards earth and resisting gravity. This image has been really important to me over the past few months as an illustration of this time that I'm in right now, looking to people who have already gone down this path for clarity, for perspective, and considering ways to move forward, and how emotional attachment, specifically within family, can disorient and blur this experience. I think I've been so programmed to value intellectual understanding over emotional understanding, and so a huge part of my process recently has been listening to myself when things feel like they make sense. So I'm taking these feelings and looking forward to expanding and making so much more, both through photography and through other mediums, to expand and keep digging and digging and digging. And that's it. Thank you.
Under 30, and Sarah and Nicole helped organize this amazing talk with 6 originally of the photographers. I'm really sad Roger couldn't make it, but we have 5 amazing photographers here. And so I want to, the previous section was really kind of closed, but I really want people to feel like they can ask questions. And I have some of my own, but I would rather prioritize you guys. So do we have any immediate things we're dying to know? I'll get us kicked off then. I thought of this question in relation to your work at first, but I think I picked this group because it was a really kind of varied group as far as their practices and what their bodies of work are about. But I think a through line that I see here is the relationship, the gap between fiction and truth. And those words obviously are pretty malleable, but I would like maybe to respond to that to begin, especially considering the other presentations you saw, in the medium of photography and in your art practices. How do you toe the line? Is that intentional? Anybody inclined to start?
Hello. Okay. So towing the line between documentary kind of truth and fiction. I mentioned this briefly, but it very much allows space for nuance, and the unanswered questions that I have about traumatic events. Does anyone else have anything to add on that?
I can say something. Okay, yes, I can hear myself. So most of my work is documentary. I definitely, I play with Photoshop sometimes, and like, I don't know. Personal Utopias has in like the bike kill photo, there's a double of one person, just like a little secret. Yeah, little Easter egg if you want to find it. But I was really looking at Joel Sternfeld's work and Gregory Crutzen, and they're vastly different in lots of ways. One of them is much more staged, Gregory Crutzen, but I was thinking a lot about like how do you take one photograph in the Personal Utopias work to represent a whole space. So it was really thinking of like the energy and like, yeah, having to like set up certain scenes and then also letting things just kind of unfold. Yeah, so I definitely played with fiction a bit.
Yeah, and I'm curious because, I think in the case of Isaac's work and in the case of your work, there is a bit more of a journalistic or historical angle, respectively. In dealing with images and dealing with, making art in general, people are always going to draw their own connotations, draw their own conclusions, even if they're not based in fact, if they're based in assumptions, if they have no idea what the Borscht Belt is, but they know how an image makes them feel. I guess, how do you feel about, maybe I would like to direct this question at you, maybe because it's the most specifically related to your work. Like, do you, I guess, how do you see your images existing simply as art objects removed from their history versus when somebody can appreciate them, maybe more deeply from the historical aspect?
Okay, wait, there's so many things to say. Wait, this works, right? Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. I feel like originally my interest in the Borscht Belt and in the Catskills is definitely rooted in history, but my work doesn't necessarily like represent that history, but it does. It's like a facet of the history because I am documenting theaters and nightclubs, and they are what they are. They are theaters and nightclubs, but at the same time, I feel like all of my photos go through like 17 layers of Photoshop and like 50 different, half my photos will be like 5 different photos layered into one of like lights on here, lights off here. So it's interesting because people will say like historical documentarian when they describe my work, but then if we're getting into the whole idea of like the truth and what the actual truth is, the truth would be like an unedited image, and even more so probably a image that's not manipulated with like putting lights that don't exist in a place where they used to exist. But I don't even know if this answers the question, but it is like a good meditation on the idea of like truth, documentary, and fine art and whatever. I feel like it's a mix of everything.
Well, you're getting at something interesting because when you manipulate the image, when you go in and intervene in the scenes that you're creating, one could argue that you are in a way restoring the truth of the images that you're creating. Or, I think you could make both arguments, but anybody else have anything to say on the binary of truth and non-truth?
For me, I think photos are definitely very much like a self-regulation thing, like something that's super expressive of like what I'm like when I'm on a walk by myself, that the photos kind of keep me in like that certain, like chasing that certain fairy tale, and I collect them in order to look back on them and kind of get in touch with that spirit. And I also think sometimes it's like the fiction is kind of like how art reflects an internal world, that sometimes when I speak, I don't feel like, I can express that. It's all like kind of the silent presentation of the work.
One last comment on the matter. I don't know. I think when I think about my work and the work I showed tonight, pretty much 100% of it is manipulated and fictionalized. And I think before I became interested in photography, I was interested in books and reading a lot of fiction. And I think some of my favorite writers draw from fact and draw from reality and are able to spin that on its head and create this fiction. And that's what I sort of want to be doing, and that's what I strive to do. And I think that's where I fall in the intersection. Yeah, fiction based in fact. Yeah, go ahead.
Do we have any questions about that little section? Yeah, I know. What's going on, guys? Come on. It doesn't have to be a smart question. It can be, how'd you do that? Yeah.
I noticed that each of you seem to have a really different relationship to connection and using photography either to connect yourself to people or animals or landscapes or spaces or histories. And maybe you guys could try and distill that down into little comments.
You want to go?
Okay. So my freshman year, I wanted to get off campus, so I just borrowed friends' cars, and would use like my photo class as an excuse to be like, I have to take photos, so I'm going to borrow your car, please. And my first project was like shop owners and their shops, and I just like discovered towns in the area. And then what I realized was photography allowed me into so many different worlds, and I would come back every week being like, guys, like there's this crazy story, and I would like talk about the story and like show the photo, and they're like, well, okay, sometimes the photo is really good, sometimes it was like, I don't like the photo's not good, but the story is great. And so I like tried to bring both of those together more. But yeah, I really do see like story and photography equally in my mind because yeah, I'm able to like with a camera in hand approach different places with curiosity and an open mind.
I feel like I always think about this actually a lot because it's like I was not alive pre-2000, but I'm obsessed with everything from like they always say 1958 to 1963, which is such a random like 5-year period, but it was when I think our world design-wise was like the most imaginative, I think. It's like World's Fair era. It's like everything is new, everything feels optimistic, and then the 1970s came. But I mean, I've always like tried to meditate on that idea as well. Like, why am I obsessed with something that I have well, I do have familial connections to these places, but I found that out after the fact, like 5 years into this. I think it just may have to do with like desire a lot, like the fact that it's a good word, right? Desire. Yeah. But like the fact that we can't necessarily go to a ballroom that's decked out like it's Vegas in the 1970s and longing for a world that is more colorful. And it seems like this road actually in Kingston, they're like really trying to up the neon and up the like just the older aspects of what's going on, the ghost signage and stuff like that. So I think there's very soon going to be a really big movement to make our world a little more colorful again, even though it's kind of already gotten there. But yeah, I think it's maybe the desire that, you know, for what I never got to experience or can't access whenever I want. And then I go into these places and I'm the only one in a 3,000 seat theater. So it feels very, not spiritual, but in a way, I guess in a way spiritual, but just cool. I don't know. It feels magical and exciting and blah, blah, blah. I could do a lot of thesaurus words, but I'm not going to. Somebody else can go now.
So I'm a pretty socially anxious person. I don't make friends easily. And the camera provides a way to meet new people. And it kind of gives me like a wall between meeting someone. So like Larry, for instance, like our mission was to like, create this collaborative relationship where we talk about, some pretty heavy things. But the camera allowed that to happen. And like, I don't have a lot of close friends because I think I only want very meaningful relationships in my life. Like I don't spread myself thin. Like I can't do it. So creating, like forming these relationships out of thin air with subjects and like creating meaning around them is very cathartic. And as Isaac said, it's like a spiritual kind of experience, like deep connection, talking about some really heavy stuff. So.
I think I kind of explained a lot of this already, but just to kind of finish off, I'm just really obsessed with photographies. Like how it's unique in that I have to go out with my camera in order to make anything. And not that having fun and playing around should have to be productive, but it does make me just going on some adventure productive. And that's represents my connection.
I think I'm a pretty solitary worker, but I also love portraiture, and I love working with people. I love working with people I'm close with, and I think the middle ground that I've sort of started to figure out recently is how after I make a picture of someone, how it's like from that moment on, the connection continues to build and build, even when it's just me sitting there in my room at night alone, editing or whatever I'm doing, sequencing. It's like that I'm still working on that relationship in a like behind the scenes way. So I love that it is something that just keeps growing, even if that other person doesn't know it.
Great question. Thank you. Kept us talking for a while. Yes.
I have a question about access. I think that is something that often differentiates photography from all other forms of art. Is the more access you can get to a place or a subject or group or person, the more intriguing the photo is. And some of you, like, I'm just like, how did you get there? How did you write that seemingly abandoned building? How did you connect with this person on such a deep, vulnerable way? How did you get into that tight-knit community? I'm just curious how each of you, if that's part of your practice, how you navigate that.
Okay. How did I do that? So, like technically speaking, the logistics of it, I posted on Nextdoor. If you know what Nextdoor, it's like Facebook for neighborhoods, and he messaged me, and it started from there. He in his first message, he was extremely open about his loss, and he was ready to share. So that prompted like a lot of pre-work, like phone calls, text messages, voice notes to each other about our shared experience. So that kind of prepped our photos together, and I took a lot of the photos from conversations that we had. So those conversations, we obviously got closer during that time, but they were little flames of little things that I could work with and pursue. So that's how that happened.
With personal utopias, it's like once I had that name, I felt like it was much easier to say like I'm doing a project on personal utopias, and I think what you're doing is a personal utopia, and people felt very flattered by that. So a lot of times the door would open up, and I mean, yeah, people were like, how did you find out about all of these different places? And when you like describe the concept, people are like, oh, I know a place. And I think like everyone kind of has, there's many. So, and then with Suminski and Ski, I'd been going there as a freshman and had friends living there throughout the years, and talked with Tim about doing a project on the inn. But yeah, I was introduced as doing a project on this space and had to build trust, and went there weekly. And I mean, it was during the pandemic, it was lockdown. I was living alone, and in a way I felt like I became part of the community. So yeah. I think like one thing I want to just say is the big photo, the main photo, that came to me in a dream, and I imagined it being like a, what are they called? The like calendars for Christmas where you like, yes, yes, exactly. So I kind of imagined that, and I told Tim, and one day he was like, "We're ready for you." Yeah. So, anyways.
Oh, all right. Oh God, a question about process. I always forget to talk about this. Wait, is the question about process? Yes, it's like
Yeah, I mean,
access process.
how do you
all
do
that.
it?
Yes, okay. How do we do it? I was like, which one? Access process, same thing. So, how do I do it? A lot of it is, I mean, a day in my life in 2021 is a little different than it would have been now because I was always doing this. But it would literally just be like, get up in my Maiden Lane apartment, which is right close to where we are. Drive out to Sullivan County, like an hour away, and I do my research normally physically. Like I have a lot of stuff from like the 50s and 60s, but you can't figure out like who owns a property online if it's owned by like a yeshiva in Brooklyn that has all these different like ways in which you have to access them. Also, I don't speak their language, so there's that too. But my quest during that year, especially because I saw everything getting demolished, was to go beyond just taking photos of the abandoned spaces, but take photos of what I cannot see beyond the walls of these camps and stuff, which meant that I had to get permission, which I thought was an interesting avenue because, you know, with abandoned buildings and stuff, normally you don't get permission. But a lot of it has just been me knocking on doors and saying that I'm somebody that I'm not, whether it be I'm like a town, you know, like a townsperson, or like, you know, I'm local to the area, or I'm this or that, or I try to pull out any connection that I physically can to like connect to this person that knows nothing about me, but convince them to let me in their building for like 3 or 4 hours. Which normally works though, because like it's yielded some really great, really interesting connections with people that I thought that I would never interact with in life, which has also been beautiful. It's like I get to view like 1.5 million different cultures, because Sullivan County also is like a melting pot of everything. So it's like the people that own these places, you won't really expect what you're going into, or at least I wouldn't. And then beyond that, it's just like I also enjoy getting permission, because it takes like sometimes 30 minutes or 5 to 6 hours, or like 1 to 2 separate days to make a photograph happen, whether it be setting the lights up or cleaning a space. So I like having the time and the moment to be able to look at, I always think of the theaters because that's the easiest way to kind of visualize the big picture, but just think of that sort of vision in my head. And I can't get that done in like half an hour under pressure. And the ones that I've taken under pressure that have miraculously come out and looked good, I'm very happy about that. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's different each time. And it's also different because, well, not different, but it's been the same for a while now, actually, because I'm like used to getting like the yeses and stuff like that. But now that I'm weaning out of this project and moving into a different project, which is more, I guess, familial based. If anybody knows Provincetown, the town of Provincetown in Massachusetts, we love Provincetown, but that's going to be a whole different experience of permission getting and photo taking, and people are going to be integrated into the photos for like the first time ever. So that's going to be a new journey of finding my way and maybe not necessarily driving 3 hours and all of that. Sorry, I feel like I'm rambling, but
No, actually, I want to add to that a little bit. I mean, I met Isaac when I was writing for Hudson Valley Mag, and I did a profile kind of interview thing. And as part of that, one of the things I got to do was kind of shadow you at the Nevele, which was that kind of big spherical, not spherical, but circular. What's it?
Tower.
Tubular. Yeah.
It's like a high rise. It's like a circular high rise tower.
Cylindrical, right?
Cylindrical.
And one of the things I love so much about your photographs is that you really, like you highlighted in your presentation, like you really highlight the beauty of these places, and it's really kind of a tropey thing in photography now to go into spaces like this and just take pictures of the discrepancy, and there are people who do that beautifully. But at least in the case of the Nevele, that's the only one that I can speak of because it's the only one that I've seen. But I mean, it's the photographs that you're making compared to how these places look, I mean, are quite disparate. And so, the process of getting, just over the course of one day, getting to see how you light it and how you, attend to it and you repaint and you do all these things just for this one photograph, I thought was really cool. And I think more could be said about that, but
Thank you.
Yeah.
More could be said.
More could be said.
I don't want to go over someone has, wait, should I say more or should we, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, if you want to respond to that, definitely.
Okay. Oh gosh. Well, and yeah, also a lot happened in 2021 for a lot of us, obviously, but I kind of toyed with the idea in like late 2020 of saying, what if I just made a hotel like the Nevele, which is like free for all, like you can light fires, not legally, but people like light fires, they do this and that, just every sort of like delinquent quote unquote activity you can do there. So I was like, what if I just made this into my studio in a way and just like continuously went back and repainted what I wanted to. And I mean, nobody's gonna like say you can't do that because the place is already too far gone. But yeah, it's nice to really immerse myself in a space for like a week and think about the tens of thousands of glasses breaking. I love that. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, just thinking about all of the different like worlds that I'm stepping into. Which family owned this hotel? Which celebrities went to this hotel? And each of these hotels, because it was owned by a family, had its own aesthetic. So you're really going into somebody's labor of love that transformed over like 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So does that answer it? I don't know if that
Totally.
answers it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did anybody else want to respond to that kind of a avenue? Okay. Are we running out of time?
Yeah, we're a little bit over.
Oh, rats.
We can do one more question.
One more question? Yeah, right over here.
So it's been so delicious to listen to almost like the orchestration of observation from each of y'all. And I have a question about practice, which is really when do you look at your work? I'm thinking of the role that memory plays in photography, particularly, right? Like with painting, with drawing, with sculpture, you're interacting with your piece as it changes. But with photo, my like relationship is, for example, going to a concert, I won't look at the videos right away because it's like it's too close and it's not seen, and it needs space. And so the role of memory and orchestration and observation, when do you look at your work? Do you look at it right after you take the photo? Do you, once you finish it on camera, immediately send it out? Do you let it sit? I'm so curious if there's different ways that you look at your work.
I mean, I shoot digital and honestly very quickly. So I do look at them at the time, but it's also really cool that I can just like hold the camera away from my eyes and get something that I wasn't even seeing when I was taking it, which of course feels like cheating, but also totally isn't. So I usually look at them pretty immediately if I have time.
When I'm in a project, I'm looking at it and really thinking about like how to move forward, what I liked from it, what I want. I mean, with the Suminski project, I redid some of those portraits 3 times. So I was really trying to do my best. But there is work that I've done that I'm still like, I don't know how to make this into a project. So I'm just gonna like let it sit on the shelf. And then I look back at it and I'm like, oh, it's so good, but like it's not there yet. So there's projects like that that I'm like, I don't know what it is yet. And one day I think it'll turn into something, but for now, it's on the shelf.
I shot on film for the Larry stuff, and as soon as I got my negatives back, I would just like get in the corner and just look at them and go crazy, just immediately looking at them. But I definitely have been a victim to like wanting to share them a little bit too quickly, which I'm trying to actively change. Like whether that be like Instagram and like just kind of sharing work before it's fully developed conceptually has been a tough hurdle to get over. But yeah, I mean, I guess for film, it's not really looking at it immediately. You kind of have to wait, but I do send it to the lab like immediately. And I just started shooting on digital again, so I'm kind of thinking about things immediately as they're happening, and showing it to the subject and like having their input and their ideas is another kind of powerful way to make pictures that I'm realizing was not available with film. So, yeah.
I don't know. I'm so impatient, and I am impatient to my core. But when I'm shooting film, it is this exercise, and it demands that I wait. And I try to push it as long as I can, because it's labor intensive and expensive to send it off all the time, but or process it myself frequently. But I like when I wait and then I have just sort of this huge amount to send off, and it spans months or states or whatever, like through multiple ideas and multiple places and things. And I don't know, I think waiting and feeling the feeling that comes with like revisiting it after so long is something that I love and I want to lean into more, but it's difficult too. Yeah, because I love it.
Cool. Right? We're wrapping it up. Just real quick. Yeah, wait, clap. Just want to quickly say thank you so much to the artists up here for being so thoughtful in their presentations. Thank you guys for coming. We have an even bigger crowd earlier, but you guys are like the people who stayed around for the long haul, so I appreciate it. Thank you to Sarah and to Nicole for helping organize this, and to Philip, my editor at Times Union, for all the support in making this article happen. So yeah, thank you guys so much.